There's something haunting about Nikola Tesla's story. Not in a horror movie way, but in the sense that it feels unfinished, like a brilliant symphony that got cut off halfway through. He died alone in a hotel room in 1943, broke and largely forgotten, feeding pigeons and talking about death rays. This was a man who'd helped electrify the world, who'd invented technology we still use today, who'd envisioned wireless communication decades before it existed. And he ended up with nothing. Not because he wasn't brilliant enough, but because brilliance alone doesn't guarantee anything. He was born in 1856 in what's now Croatia, in a village called Smiljan. His father was a Serbian Orthodox priest, his mother an inventor of household tools who never got formal credit for her work. That detail matters because Tesla always said he got his inventive mind from her, watching her create practical solutions with whatever materials she had. His childhood was strange in ways that seemed to mark him for the life he'd lead. He had an older brother who died in a riding accident when Tesla was 5, and that death haunted the family. Tesla claimed he had visions, intensely vivid hallucinations where he'd see images so real he couldn't distinguish them from reality. Lights would blind him, sounds would overwhelm him. He was either gifted or troubled, depending on who you asked, probably both. He was exceptional in school, able to do calculus in his head, absorbing information at a pace that made his teachers suspicious. There's a story about him solving a complicated math problem so quickly that his professor accused him of cheating, couldn't believe anyone could calculate that fast mentally. But Tesla could. His brain worked differently, operated on a level most people couldn't access. He could visualize machines in complete detail in his mind, rotate them, test them, modify them, all without touching a pencil or a piece of metal. This wasn't just imagination, it was something closer to an alternative form of reality. He studied engineering in Austria, then worked for a telegraph company in Budapest. That's where he had his first major insight, the one that would define his career. He was walking through a park at sunset, reciting Goethe, when suddenly the solution to a problem that had been bothering him appeared fully formed in his mind. The rotating magnetic field, the principle that would make alternating current motors possible. He stopped walking and drew the diagram in the dirt with a stick, seeing it so clearly he didn't need to write it down. He'd carry that vision with him for years before he could actually build it. He moved to Paris, worked for Edison's European division, then decided to go to America. When he arrived in New York in 1884, he had 4 cents in his pocket, a letter of recommendation, and a head full of ideas that would change the world. The letter was to Thomas Edison, and it supposedly said something like, "I know 2 great men and you are one of them, the other is this young man." Whether that's true or embellished doesn't really matter. What matters is that Tesla went to work for Edison, and it was a disaster waiting to happen. Edison was a direct current guy, practical and business-minded, someone who valued what worked and what sold. Tesla was an alternating current visionary, theoretical and idealistic, someone who cared about elegant solutions and perfect systems. They were never going to get along. The famous story is that Edison promised Tesla $50,000 if he could improve Edison's direct current generators. Tesla did it, worked for months, redesigned the systems, made them more efficient. When he asked for the payment, Edison allegedly laughed it off, said Tesla didn't understand American humor. Whether it happened exactly that way is disputed, but something soured the relationship badly enough that Tesla quit. That could have been the end of his American dream. He was broke again, ended up digging ditches for a while to survive, which must have felt like cosmic punishment for someone with his intellect. But he kept talking about his ideas, and eventually he found investors who were willing to listen. In 1887, he established the Tesla Electric Company and started building the devices he'd been visualizing for years. The induction motor, the alternating current system, transformers and generators that could transmit electricity over long distances efficiently. Everything Edison's system couldn't do. George Westinghouse heard about Tesla's work and saw its potential immediately. He bought the patents, hired Tesla as a consultant, and went to war with Edison over which electrical system would power America. This was the war of currents, and it got vicious. Edison was electrocuting animals in public demonstrations, trying to prove AC was deadly. Tesla and Westinghouse countered by demonstrating that AC could be perfectly safe when properly handled. The technical argument was clear. AC was superior for large-scale power distribution, but Edison had name recognition and wasn't above dirty tricks. The turning point came in 1893 at the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. Westinghouse and Tesla won the contract to light up the entire fair with alternating current. Hundreds of thousands of people saw it, this magical city of light powered by Tesla's system. Then came the big prize, harnessing Niagara Falls for hydroelectric power. Tesla's AC system was chosen, and when it went online in 1896, it transmitted electricity to Buffalo, New York, 20 miles away. That was it, AC had won. The world would be powered by Tesla's vision, not Edison's. Tesla should have been set for life. He had the patents, had Westinghouse's backing, had proven his system worked. But money didn't stick to him the way it should have. Part of it was Westinghouse's company struggling financially. They renegotiated Tesla's contract, and he ended up tearing up agreements that would have made him one of the wealthiest men in history. Some accounts say he did it to save Westinghouse's company, that he believed in the friendship and the mission more than the money. Others suggest he was naive, got outmaneuvered by sharper businessmen. Either way, he gave up a fortune. That became the pattern of his life. Brilliant ideas, functional inventions, then somehow losing control of them or failing to capitalize properly. He invented the radio, or at least the fundamental components of it, demonstrated wireless transmission of signals before Marconi, filed patents, showed it working. But Marconi got the credit, won the Nobel Prize, became the father of radio. Tesla sued and eventually won the patent case, but not until 1943, after he was dead. The recognition came too late to matter. He kept inventing, though, couldn't stop even if he'd wanted to. Remote control devices, which he demonstrated by piloting a small boat around a pool at Madison Square Garden. The audience thought it was magic, couldn't understand how he was controlling it without wires. X-ray experimentation, years before Röntgen got famous for it. Wireless power transmission, his obsession for decades. He believed you could send electricity through the air, through the earth itself, make it available everywhere without wires. He wasn't entirely wrong. We do have wireless charging now, but the scale he imagined never materialized. His most ambitious project was Wardenclyffe Tower, a massive facility on Long Island designed to transmit power and communications wirelessly across the globe. He convinced J.P. Morgan to fund it, started construction in 1901, built this enormous tower that looked like something from a science fiction novel. But Morgan pulled funding when he realized the system would provide free electricity to anyone who wanted it. Why would Morgan invest in something that couldn't be metered and controlled? Tesla scrambled to find other investors, couldn't, and the project died. The tower was eventually torn down, sold for scrap during World War I to pay Tesla's debts. That failure broke something in him. He'd poured everything into Wardenclyffe, his money, his reputation, his vision of the future. When it collapsed, he retreated further into himself. He became more eccentric, more isolated. He'd always had peculiar habits, obsessive-compulsive tendencies, fears of germs and certain shapes. As he got older, those intensified. He lived in hotels, moved frequently when he couldn't pay the bills, survived on milk and crackers. He became terrified of round objects, couldn't stand jewelry, would only stay in hotel rooms with numbers divisible by 3. He also became obsessed with pigeons, spent hours feeding them, claimed to have a special relationship with one white pigeon in particular. He said he loved that pigeon like a man loves a woman, that it loved him back, that when it died it was the end of his creative life. People who met him in his later years found him strange, that he had the imagination to see the future, but not the practical skills to navigate the present. He could envision wireless communication, renewable energy, automation, all the things we take for granted now. But he couldn't manage money, couldn't play the business game, couldn't compromise his ideals enough to succeed in the commercial world. Edison was a worse engineer but a better businessman, and in capitalism, that's often what matters. There's a tendency to romanticize Tesla now, to turn him into a misunderstood genius who was too pure for the corrupt world of commerce. And there's truth in that, but it's incomplete. Tesla made choices that hurt himself. He burned bridges, refused collaborations, insisted on total control even when it meant projects failed. He had opportunities to partner with people who could have handled the business side while he focused on invention, but his ego wouldn't allow it. He wanted credit, wanted his name on everything, wanted the world to recognize his brilliance. That need for recognition undermined him repeatedly. His relationship with Edison is often portrayed as a simple good guy versus bad guy story, with Tesla as the visionary hero and Edison as the greedy villain. Reality was more complicated. Edison was ruthless and absolutely willing to use dirty tactics, but he also understood something Tesla didn't. That inventions only matter if they reach people, and reaching people requires infrastructure, manufacturing, marketing, all the unglamorous work that Tesla found beneath him. Edison wasn't a better inventor than Tesla, but he was better at making inventions matter in the real world. Tesla also had a tendency to overpromise. He'd announce inventions before they were fully developed, claim capabilities that the technology couldn't actually deliver yet. Sometimes he was ahead of schedule, and the tech caught up eventually. Sometimes he was just wrong, pursuing ideas that sounded good but couldn't work in practice. That damaged his credibility, made investors wary, made the public skeptical. By the end of his life, when he talked about death rays and earthquake machines, people nodded politely and ignored him. The sad part is that mixed in with the wild claims were legitimate insights. He understood resonance and frequency in ways other scientists didn't. His ideas about wireless power weren't crazy, they were just premature. His vision of a world connected by wireless communication was exactly right. He just didn't have the technology to implement it in 1900. If he'd been born 50 years later, or if he'd lived 50 years longer, he might have seen his dreams realized. Instead, he died before the world caught up to him. When he died in January 1943, he was 86 years old and completely alone. A maid found him in his hotel room at the New Yorker. The funeral was attended by a few thousand people, including representatives from various countries, because by then his international reputation had grown even if his American standing had faded. Yugoslavia claimed him as a native son, there were tributes from scientific organizations, acknowledgement of his contributions to electrical engineering. But he died in debt, with no family, no close relationships, nothing but his inventions and his unfulfilled dreams. The FBI seized his papers after his death, concerned about his claims regarding weapons technology. Most of it was returned to his family eventually, ended up in a museum in Belgrade. But there's always been speculation about what they found, whether Tesla really had developed something dangerous or revolutionary in his final years. Probably not. Probably it was just the notebooks of an old man whose brilliant mind had started to fray. But the mystery adds to the legend. What's interesting is how Tesla's reputation has been rehabilitated in recent decades. During his life, and for years after, he was a footnote, overshadowed by Edison and Marconi and other inventors who'd commercialized their work better. But as technology advanced and people could see how prescient his ideas were, he became a cult figure. Elon Musk named his electric car company after him. Engineers and inventors cite him as an inspiration. He's become the patron saint of misunderstood geniuses, the proof that being right isn't enough if the world isn't ready to listen. There's something appealing about that narrative, especially to people who feel underappreciated in their own fields. Tesla becomes proof that eventually, history recognizes true genius, that commercial success doesn't determine worth, that dying broke doesn't mean you failed. And there's truth in that. Tesla's contributions to electrical engineering are fundamental. We live in a world built on his patents. But it's also worth remembering that he could have had both recognition and success, that it didn't have to be either-or. His failures weren't inevitable, they were the result of choices and personality traits that worked against him. His imagination was genuinely extraordinary, though. The ability to visualize complete machines in his mind, to test them virtually, to perfect them before building physical prototypes, that's a rare gift. Most inventors work through iteration, building and failing and rebuilding. Tesla could skip steps, see the end result immediately. It gave him an advantage in some ways, let him work faster and more efficiently, but it also disconnected him from the practical process, made him impatient with the messy reality of actually manufacturing things. He was also ahead of his time morally in some ways. He believed electricity should be free and accessible to everyone, that technology should serve humanity rather than profit. That's noble, but it's also why he died broke. The economic system doesn't reward people who want to give things away. It rewards people who can create scarcity, control access, charge for value. Tesla never learned that lesson, or learned it and rejected it and paid the price. His personal life was essentially non-existent. He never married, never had children, claimed he was too focused on his work for romance. There are hints that he might have been in love once with J.P. Morgan's daughter or with Katharine Johnson, wife of his friend Robert, but nothing came of it. He lived for his inventions, poured all his passion and energy into his work, and ended up isolated. Whether that was a sacrifice he consciously made or just how things turned out, it's impossible to say. But it's hard not to see it as sad, this brilliant mind spending its final years alone in a hotel room. The pigeons seem pathetic at first, but maybe they were the only connection he could handle by then. Animals don't judge, don't want anything except food and attention. They don't care about patents or money or recognition. For someone who'd been disappointed by people repeatedly, maybe pigeons were safer. Or maybe he was just losing his grip on reality, retreating into delusion. Both can be true simultaneously. What Tesla proved is that imagination alone isn't enough. You need imagination to conceive of new possibilities, but you need other skills to make them real. Business sense, social intelligence, the ability to compromise and collaborate, these aren't lesser talents. They're essential. Tesla had the vision to see a wireless world, but he didn't have the patience or the political skill to navigate the path from vision to reality. So other people took his ideas and made them work, and they got the credit and the money while he got footnotes. That's not fair, but fairness isn't guaranteed. The universe doesn't care about giving credit to the person who thought of something first. It cares about who executes, who persists, who gets it across the finish line. Tesla got some of his ideas across, the AC motor especially, and that's why we remember him. But he left so much unrealized, so much potential that never materialized because he couldn't or wouldn't do the unglamorous work of implementation. His story is a reminder that genius is common enough, relatively speaking. Lots of people have brilliant ideas. What's rare is the combination of brilliance and practicality, vision and execution, imagination and discipline. Tesla had the first part of each pairing but not the second, and that imbalance defined his life. He changed the world despite himself, despite his flaws and limitations. Imagine what he could have accomplished if he'd been able to work with people instead of against them, if he'd valued results over recognition, if he'd been willing to compromise even a little. But then maybe he wouldn't have been Tesla. Maybe that uncompromising vision, that refusal to accept limitations, was what made him special in the first place. Maybe the same traits that led to his failures were inseparable from the ones that led to his breakthroughs. You can't neatly separate genius from dysfunction, can't extract the useful parts of someone's personality and discard the rest. Tesla was a package deal, brilliance and eccentricity and self-destructive pride all tangled together. He died believing the world hadn't appreciated him enough, and he was right. But he also died knowing he'd contributed something fundamental, that his name would be associated with electricity